visit to Anchorage, Alaska begins with our arrival aboard the Island Princess cruise ship operated by Princess Cruise Lines at Whittier, Alaska, about 60 miles southwest of Anchorage. Whittier, Alaska is a deep-sea port that was used during World War II as a transit point for supplies from the United States to the Pacific theater of the war. We disembarked the Island Princess at about 10 in the morning. At that point, we boarded a bus for the rest of the trip to Anchorage. The trip was very interesting. There was something unique. That was a tunnel through a mountain. There was a one-way tunnel that changed directions about every half hour. So if you arrived at just the right time, you could go straight on through to Anchorage. Unfortunately, we arrived just before the tunnel reversed directions against us, and we had to wait half an hour to go through that tunnel. When we got to Anchorage, we went directly to the airport where the cruise line had left our luggage. At the airport, we rented a car and went from there into Anchorage, where we drove directly to our bed and breakfast, where we stayed for the next 6 days. During our stay, we visited Seward, Alaska, about 120 miles southwest of Anchorage, and Wasilla, Alaska, about 45 miles northeast of Anchorage. The neighborhood of our bed and breakfast where we stayed was typical middle-class America. In fact, the entire city was typical middle-class America, complete with popular restaurants, McDonald's, and a downtown. The city was unusual in that there were very few high-rise buildings. It was almost always overcast, and the population was about half of the entire population of the state of Alaska. Here is a popular local restaurant where we ate twice, called the Moose's Lip, where one might have to wait for half an hour to get a table. Here are two patrons at the Moose's Lip, a grandfather and his grandson. They had just come from a children's theater rehearsal. Now we move on to the northern edge of the city, where there is a river where the locals fish for salmon. Here's the bait shop next to an overhead bridge where we stopped to watch the fishing. People from elsewhere think they have to hire a guide and go off in the wilderness, but that's not true. The locals catch their fish locally. Our first venture outside of Anchorage was southwest to Seward, Alaska. That was about 120 miles away, and we took our rental car for the trip. It was a very beautiful trip, actually considered one of the most scenic highways in the United States. Seward is a relatively small town which has a year-round harbor free of ice. We then drove back to Anchorage and prepared to make a trip the next day north to Wasilla, Alaska, which is about 45 miles northeast of Anchorage. Wasilla is a small town with a small historic district which we visited. The town's main claim to fame is that it is the headquarters of the Iditarod Trail annual sled dog race and the home of Sarah Palin, a former mayor of Wasilla and former Republican candidate for Vice President of the United States, which was lost to the Democratic Party. We had lunch at a popular local diner recommended to us by a local at the Iditarod headquarters. Unfortunately, Sarah Palin was not dining there that day. Here I am, decked out in my new hat and sweatshirt that I purchased in the Iditarod gift shop. They kept dogs and puppies behind the shop for the public to enjoy. Here is the cover of the 2018 program for the Iditarod race, which the public can purchase either in person in the shop or by mail. We drove back to Anchorage and departed the next day by air for the 2,300-mile flight back to Los Angeles.